Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Community Environment Board. I just wanted to start with a few comments. So, at the last meeting, it was more of an introduction to what this board covers, what our responsibilities are. So, this is in a way the first proper meeting, if you like, where we're looking at issues that we need to make decisions on. So I just thought to go through a few tips. I'm sure you know now, because you're not such new councillors anymore. I'm sure you know, but just so that everybody's clear. So I'm going to assume that everybody's read the papers. So what will happen is that I will give a very short introduction to each paper. On some occasions, the officers will give a short introduction, sometimes, if that's what they wish to do. And then we're open to discussion. And obviously, if you wish to speak, just indicate by putting up your hand. All comments through the chair, and I'll try and keep people in order. The hands went up, but I'll get to everybody eventually. So I'll apologise now if I miss you out, but we'll get to you. And then we'll draw the board's attention to the recommendation, proposer and seconder, and we vote on it. So it's not complicated. That's what we do in most meetings, but that's just the process. So everybody's clear. Okay. Right, so let's moving on then to the agenda. So evacuation procedure. We don't have anybody from the public here, so I won't go through the whole spiel, but only to say we've got two doors there and one at the back. And if there is an emergency, please go out and congregate on the car park out there. And it'll be, I think, Mrs. James who will be in charge of making sure everybody's there. Please don't go home till you've been ticked off the list. So that's what happens if there's no fire alarm planned. So if there's one that sounded, we need to. Okay. Apologies. So I've got apologies from Councillor Gosling, substituted by Councillor Reary. Welcome. Councillor Hobley is substituted by Councillor Parsons. I think you did before. Okay. So anyway, welcome anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Any interest, peculiar or non-peculiar interest to declare? No? Okay, thank you very much. We haven't got any public and no public questions, so we'll move over that one and move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of June. Are there any comments on that? Let's just quickly get to it. So we've got page 5 and page 6. Comments? So can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Jens. And those in favour of accepting the minutes? Thank you. Any against? Any objections? Or abstentions, I have to say. Yeah, thank you. That's passed. Right, so I just want to explain that. The minutes are always kept very short. You'll notice that it's just very much just what we've decided. However, that doesn't mean that we don't take attention to what you say in the meeting. And there were quite a few suggestions that were made at the last meeting, and I'm just going to run through them, so that you know where we are and what you suggested and how we're going to respond. So, first of all, the members wanted to go on a visit to the Sherborne Recycling Centre. That has been arranged. You were invited. Hopefully, a number of you managed to get there. There was a request for an update on fly tipping, and that's on today's agenda. A possible survey for the household recycling centres, the tips, in other words. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I'll come back to that, but we will talk about that. An air quality report is scheduled to come in October, which is something else we asked for. An update from the chair of the Climate Change Board, which is going to meet in September, so that will come back to our October meeting. Update from the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board is today. We've got the minutes today, and there'll be a verbal update from Sandra as the chair. Update on fly posting will come to the October committee. Stolen bins. There's been quite a lot of discussion on this. What happens if someone gets a bin stolen? And do they always have to pay for it? Are there any circumstances under which they don't have to pay the £40 to replace it? This has become quite a complex issue. So what I'm going to suggest is that it goes to the next meeting, our next meeting. And it's not only stolen bins, but it's stolen and damaged bins. Under what circumstances do you have your bin replaced, or you have to pay for it yourself? So it's quite a big topic. So we'll look at it. We'll have a paper on it next time. street sweeping schedule. That is not easy to say, and that will be circulated to members. And it has been suggested that we don't just get the schedule, Kath, but we also get the little map of what we do in each area. Do we just do one street, or we do more than one street for the different areas? Would be really helpful. Okay, thanks. And finally, to bring the focus on each leisure service, and today we're looking at Portsmouth. So that was the list. So I'm going to go back to the one on the possible survey for Lower House Farm booking system. That's the tips to you and I. So basically, there's been quite a lot of correspondence, very thick correspondence going backwards and forwards with county. So county have confirmed that they are going to conduct a customer satisfaction survey in the autumn. So what I'm suggesting, and please feel free if you don't want to do this, what I'm suggesting is that we fully cooperate with that, in the sense that we take it upon ourselves to make sure our residents have the opportunity to respond to that survey. We promote as much as we can, and that it goes to all the parish and town councils so they can promote it, and also so they can have paper copies. So those that aren't on the internet can go to their local centre and fill it in, and then that will be returned to the council so they can have their say as well. And that when we get the results of that survey, not only do we get the results for the whole of Warwickshire, but it's broken down by district and borough. So we will know what the North Warwickshire responses were. So I think as the county are doing a survey, it would seem sensible that we use that one rather than do a separate one. So if members are happy with that, please feel free to comment if you wish. But if that's the case, then I'll ask Kath to write to the county and explain what we would like to happen with that survey. So everyone happy with that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fowler.
No, thank you. Certainly welcome that, Chair, but that comes forward to this authority. One thing that I'm also interested in is quite some years ago, I used to go to Solihull, because Birkenhill was nearer to us, but similar to this authority, that has now changed because on postcode, I can't visit Solihull, Birkenhill anymore. But the one thing that I did notice, Chair, that there were certain items that Solihull would take, yet Dordon wouldn't. And I would just be interested in this to come to this board, just to identify what Solihull, Tamworth and Leeton might accept that we actually don't, and the reason why. And I'm sure there is good reasons why. But I just thought it'd be interesting, especially if that survey comes out. That would be interesting as well.
Yes.
Maybe saying, well, why can't we go to Solihull rather than going up to Dordon? Yeah. That's another reason why I thought I'd bring that up. Just, in other words, what we can't take to ours, but you can do in those three places, and others that you can do. Be helpful. That's
helpful. I think it would be helpful just to know what we can, be very specific about what we are allowed to take to our own recycling centres and what we're not. And not only what we're allowed to take, but what we're allowed to take it in, because there's a great deal of confusion about which vehicles are allowed and which aren't, and under which circumstances. So I understand that if you've got, for example, a pickup truck and it's the only vehicle you've got in the house, you're allowed to use it. I don't know how we work this one out, but if it isn't the only vehicle, then you've got to use your car. So so we just need some clarity on that. Would be really, really helpful. And if we can compare it with other areas as well, that would be also useful. I think one of the reasons, or one of the advantages, if you like, to the county of having the booking system is you have to put your postcode in, so they know if you're from Warwickshire. So it's a way of stopping people on. So as Peter said, he used to go to Solihull, because Solihull's got the same system. You can't do that now because you have to put your postcode in. And I don't know how much difference it makes. I would imagine that there's people going both ways across the border, but anyway, I don't know how much difference it makes, but it does cost authorities quite a lot to dispose of whatever's in the recycling centres. So I suppose they don't want to attract people from other areas, but I'm not sure that that's a particularly strong argument, but it is something to bear in mind, that whilst you're booking, they do know where you live, as it were, whereas normally they don't. So it's worked in Peter's case. He's not allowed to go across the border anymore.
Yeah, if I may just ask as well, I'd be interested to know on the recycling percentages, because when I drove into Solihull, you'd see that they've hit a target of whatever percentage. Does that have a material difference on the pun to our various areas? That would be helpful to know too. Thank you.
That's awful.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We were going to ask actually if we could have a recycling and domestic waste breakdown over the last few years, probably starting with pre-COVID years. That would make sense so that we could properly evaluate.
Yeah.
But we're just wondering if we could have a little look at that whilst we're, investigating everything that's going on with the service.
Yeah, there's plenty of data actually. It just reminded me that it goes to, there's something called the Warwickshire Waste Partnership, where all the districts and boroughs meet with the county. And we look at all those stats, but you don't get to see them. So it's not a secret. We can send them to you. That would be really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I think we were particularly interested in the fact that sort of recycling seems to have come down. Actually, at one point, I believe we were around 75%, and we've come down to 50%, and we'd sort of certainly like to know what's happened there, as I'm sure a lot of us would, and that's there. And obviously, yeah, to be honest, I've used the booking system and have no problems with the booking system. I think it works actually quite well. But of course, at the end of the day, the cost of disposing of the waste through the centres is there and it's very real. But of course, the cost of dealing with fly tipping is significantly more. And we really do want to make it, our tips accessible. On that note, I mean, the one thing that I've always sort of has always been called into my attention is this restriction on vans. Now, I understand why we have a restriction on vans, because you do not want commercial activities ending up in our domestic recycling tip, because they get charged and should be charging that as part of their commercial activities. But I do wonder if there are ways of perhaps getting vans and pickups registered in a slightly different way. But what tends to happen is that people object having to get the permit, as it were. To find some way of encouraging them to get the permit is beneficial, I think, because I think it would reduce fly tipping. That does happen.
Right. Okay. Well, it looks as if we've got quite a lot on fly. Well, on the tips generally, so we can bring that at the next meeting. I'm beginning to wonder whether we should bring somebody from the county to talk about it. So, because we might have something else on, we'll see if we can get somebody there, because so much of it is their responsibility. So they should be here to answer your questions, I think. So let's invite them and see if we can get somebody to do it. I've just got a minute. I've got Councillor Phillips here.
Just to echo what David has said, I mean, that certainly is, I think, would help to cut down some on fly tipping. The other thing, it'd be interesting to know how they know that's your only vehicle as a pickup or whatever. I'm sure they know how many vehicles I own. I'm a bit concerned. But I forgot what I was going to say something. Yeah, I thought that Tamworth can use the Dordon one, can they not?
Yes.
Because it was part of the setup, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? I'm not sure, to be honest. You might well be right. Yeah.
I thought they could. Yeah, I thought that sort of. So I'm not. I suppose it's a question of Alan's piece of string. How far across the border? Can you? And if people from Tamworth can use that area, and presumably from all over Tamworth, I wonder why people sort of on the border of Warwickshire couldn't come if this problem's going the other way. It seems again in the, as David said, in the sort of idea of sort of stopping fly tipping, if we can accommodate I know again there's an expense, but if we can accommodate as many people as need to use it, then the expense because once a person's in our area and they're frustrated, they dump it in our lanes. They don't take it back and dump it. And if they're on the border anyway, it'll get dumped on the way. So I think that there is a expediency there to take into consideration. As I say, I think what we've all just said, I mean, really, is it needs, as you just said, it needs a deeper look at, really, and it needs a deeper policy rather than just saying, wham, bam, that's it. We need to sort of be more flexible around all of it, I think, and to try to accommodate people.
It might be quite timely, actually, at our next meeting to get somebody. I'm not sure when the survey is going to finish. It might be a good time to put our view and also ask lots of questions. Sorry, I've just got Councillor Johnson. I've been your
Sorry.
Thanks, Jeff. Just expanding on what Dave said. At Dordon, there's ANPR system there. Now,
When it works.
sorry?
When it works.
Well, when it works, yeah. But there is an ANPR system there. Is it something that could be used to identify these authorised vehicles? And maybe that when you book your slot, you put your number in.
But you do put your number in when you book a slot.
Yeah, but they don't use the ANPR.
No, I'm not sure
Yeah,
whether they're allowed.
ANPR is used everywhere else?
But that's just to recognise that you've got the number you put on your form is the number that's going through the gate.
Yeah, but if you've got one of these, a truck that's the only one in the family, could that be integrated into the ANPR system that says, yeah, okay, you're all right with that, or that truck ain't allowed because it's,
Well, it's a good question to ask it when we
ANPR
get
there
here.
and we use it.
Yeah, we're getting here. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, just very quickly. I mean, Lower House Farm was a joint venture between Warwickshire and Staffordshire, so it is legit for Staffordshire people to go there. But also, I mean, one of the problems with the van thing is that if you've got a car, got a van, actually, when it comes to taking your rubbish, you don't really want to put it in your car. You want to put it in the van, and that is a thing. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Blight tipping then, is there a strategy overall for this? Have we got a bigger view on our long-term goals?
We've got fly tipping on the agenda, so we'll talk about that when we get there. I think this whole business about the tips and how they work, we'll come back to it with that survey. Sorry to cut you off, but we will talk about it when we get to item 7. So first of all, we've got item 6. Everybody's happy to move on, is the budgetary control report. And obviously, this helps us focus on the cost of the services that we deliver. And in 2.1, it explains that we do have to take into account what we call the overhead charges. So all services that we deliver in the borough has to carry with it a certain amount of money, which covers senior management, things like senior management, HR, finance, all the overarching systems that help the wheels go round, basically. So just to point that out. Also, I need to just point out that particularly within our services, we have 2 different types of services. We have statutory services. Those are services that we have to deliver as a local authority by law. That includes, for example, waste collection. Then we have non-statutory services where we don't have to deliver them by law, but we usually agree that it's something we should deliver, which is like leisure services. So leisure services are not a stat service, but most members agree that it's something we should do. So, but just bear in mind that on Appendix A, the first 4 or 5 lines shows our leisure centres. And if you add up that, those leisure centres cost us around £2 million a year. So we just need to bear that in mind, that our leisure services, not the whole leisure services, sorry, just the centres, the leisure centres, cost us about £2 million a year. And everybody in the borough is paying for that. But not everybody in the borough uses the services. So we just need to bear that in mind. The other thing is, right at the bottom of that table, in the little bits of lines at the bottom, you'll see the impact of the changes to VAT. Now, somebody will correct me if I've got this wrong, but I understand that there was case law recently about VAT being charged for leisure services in local authorities, and it has been decreed that thou shalt not pay. So we've been able to claim back for the 1 year £137,620, which is very welcome. We've also put in, because you're allowed to, a bid for 4 years of back pay, if you like. We may or may not get that. HMRC is sitting down and looking at it at the moment. So when they've got the bill from all the local authorities, they might decide that they're not going to go back 4 years. But anyway, while they're saying they are, we're going to try it. So that's where we are. And just a few overarching things on that report. So please feel free to ask any questions or whatever you'd like. Any comments? Yeah, Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just item 3.4.1 and a lower number of customer trade waste. I just wonder how many trade waste customers we've lost over the or what period and how many and what.
Right, trade waste. Who? Is that the youth? Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So trade waste customers, commercial waste customers change every month. Some new businesses come on, some come off. We don't have the profile here this evening. That is something that we can give to members to show the detailed profile on that. But it is something that we keep working on. And if we do lose customers, then we will go back out and seek to get some new customers to replace them. But in the grand scheme of the budget at the moment, that would be quite a minimal figure in terms of losses. And next month, you may very well find that figure will flip and become a positive. But we can provide that information to members.
So through your chairs, it's not a trend. It's just a blip.
Well, trends you tend to take over a longer period than a 1 month period. But we can get the last 12 month period.
It's not a trend. It's just a blip. It's just a 1 month period.
It will vary every month. Yeah, sometimes they'll go up, sometimes they'll go down. And again, if you have a big customer, so for example, a commercial customer, I don't know if you had a Boots High Street, they're national contracts, etc. So sometimes they will change. A national customer will go with a different supplier or what have you. So there is a local and national trend as well. But we'll provide that information to members.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add as well that in effect an 1100 bin could be costing a customer about £1,000 per year, so it doesn't necessarily have to be paid to many bins. 7,500.
Is that all right? Okay. Councillor Singh.
3.5. Recently, I sent an email about I had from somebody about cluttering of the pavements with A-boards. They said overgrown hedges, carelessly parked vehicles clog up our pavements and make it difficult and hazardous to get round. I wonder if there's anything in the budget to help that cluttering clear up. Will there be anything?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A number of the issues, and thank you for sending the email through. I've got the email in front of me. A number of those issues are enforcement and indeed issues that Warwickshire County deal with. They're not actually borough council functions. So, for example, A-boards, enforcement of chairs and tables following the recent legislation. But what we can do is I can provide a copy of that response. Again, I'm more than happy to write to the county to confirm what enforcement they currently do or what surveys they currently do regarding street clutter in the borough. And indeed, if there's anything that we could work on together to improve that position, even though the bulk of the things would be in their jurisdiction, not ours.
Okay, yes, so you get a response from that. It'd be good if you could write to the county, that would be really good, helpful, thank you. Councillor Jarvis and then Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at Appendix A, one of the things that comes to mind is the artificial grass pitch at the QE school, which is an excellent asset and used by all of North Warwickshire in different forms, whether it be football, hockey, you name it, those sports use it. That pitch has been laid now for somewhere around about 10 years. and it is looking pretty sad. It needs some work to bring it back up to a standard where the correct level of sports can be played, because the pitch has to be a standard for, you know, to meet, I'll say, the hockey regulations. The pitch itself now, and I went and had a look at it the other night, is pretty well shiny. The actual texture of the matting's gone. It looks pretty sad. What is the plan, or is there money in the budget to actually refurbish this? Because it is an excellent asset, and we don't want to get it just to run out and be scrapped.
Thank you. Simon.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much. We'd agree with the importance of the asset, and of course that is reflected in your playing pitch strategy already. And I would presume it will also feature in the playing pitch strategy review, which we're endeavouring to bring back a report to your October board on that. But just for clarification, the asset itself is owned by the Academy. It's the Academy's responsibility to replace it. Clearly that was understood at the time of its provision. We have a formal agreement for the community use of that outside school hours. And we have an income share arrangement with the school, and both parties agree to keep any profit share from that in a fund. And my colleague Nigel will correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've got around about £60,000 in that fund, but it is for the Borough Council to determine how that fund is used, whether it's put towards a replacement service or not, or it uses it for something else. Just as it is for the school to determine how to use its fund. So there's no commitment on us to contribute to that, but you could if you wanted to. But you're talking about an asset, the carpet, I'm guessing off the top of my head, but you're talking about £250,000 worth to replace it, but it's a school asset and it's its responsibility to arrange for its replacement.
Thank you. I wonder if when we come to look at the facilities in Atherstone with the relationship with Queen Elizabeth, we might just take that into account and have had some discussions with them by then about future planning for that pitch.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question for my own understanding. On the profile budget, is the profile simply arrived at by dividing by the number of months involved, or is it more complicated than that? Does it take into account previous years, how much has been spent at a certain time in previous years, or something like energy that you use more at certain times of year than that?
Thank you, Chair. Basically, some of the budgets are 12ths. Energy bills, we look at the trend from the last year and try and fluctuate it according to usage. Obviously, higher winter, lower summer. So it isn't just a straight 12. We try and reflect on the different budgets, the different type of activity.
So it depends on what?
Yes, on the different parts of the budget.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Right, okay, so I'm going to move you back to the recommendation then on budget control, which is that the report be noted and the board requests any further information that feels would assist in monitoring the budgets under the board's control. I think we've done that, so can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Singh, seconded by, thank you, Councillor Wright. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. So moving on then to item 7, which is flag tipping. Which is I think that we need to look at. And I need to at this point introduce 2 people who've joined us. Thank you very much. We've got Eden Ross, who's been doing a lot of work on the IT bit behind all this and understanding where the cameras need to go, and I think the Power BI, which I'm sure you'll talk to us about later. And we've got Lillian Waldbeard, who is one of our enforcement officers, who can tell us all about how we get as far as prosecuting people if we do. So thank you very much for joining us, and please feel free to ask them questions when we get to that discussion. As you can see, the report states the impact on the borough and on residents of flag tipping, and the fact that it costs us over £200,000 a year and starts talking about the introduction of AI, artificial intelligence cameras, and the use of Power BI, which I'm sure can be explained to us. It's also got some case studies, 2 case studies there, which interestingly, neither of them resulted in a prosecution, which shows how complex it can be to prosecute. But I'm sure Milan will be able to tell us about some more successful prosecutions that we are pursuing at the moment. So, anybody got any questions or comments? Yeah, was that you, Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a strategy in place or any targets for the actually amount of people that you want to actually prosecute for, or is it just as you can go?
Perhaps it would be helpful if you could just explain the process of when and how you can prosecute, and then explain about how many you expect to do in the year. Would that be okay? Yes, okay. Can you do that?
So the way that we get any funding, anything that comes into environmental health, there has to be a report of a witness, or there has to be evidence found within the waste. That can vary depending on a 3-month period. So last month, so between April and June, we had 30 cases reported to us. Between those 30 cases, we did some IUCs by post, and we did some interviews under caution, interviews, we called them in, and that totaled about 45 over the 3-month period. So that varies depending on what's happening over the time period, how much evidence is found in that waste, and that's how the enforcement works. There isn't a specific target that we hit, that we try to hit, but it's try to prosecute if we find evidence. So every single one, any open investigation that we have, we're trying to go for prosecution. So it's essentially 100% in that sense. It's just a case of what can we find and can we get enough evidence for legal to pursue the case.
Can you just explain, if you get the evidence, do the cases go to court, or are they settled out of court?
So sometimes it depends on what the recommendation is from legal. So we can send a report to legal with a case file saying this is what we'd like. So it can either be a fixed penalty notice, which is the easiest and fastest way to deal with these cases, or it can be a prosecution depending on the scale, and just maybe if it's mostly to do with the scale of the FITIF, but fixed penalty notice, and if they don't pay the fixed penalty notice, we do recommend prosecution, and then it's legal's decision on whether we pursue it. And they've got some factors that they consider on their end.
That answers your question, Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, that's brilliant, thank you.
Any more questions and comments on this? I'd like to know a little bit more about the Power BI and how we're using that, and what's going to happen, what will change.
Do you want me to share something on the screen?
Oh. We're not usually treated to this sort of presentation, so we're very excited, thank you.
And so on the screen there, we've got the data from 2019 to current 2023, and that's just for the months that have passed this year, so basically January to August. So you can see quite clearly by now we are starting to have an impact on the number of flow tips that are reported to us.
Right.
We're currently hovering around half the number of reports that we received in 2022 that we see today. So that's strong positive news. Milan's team have done a lot of work on enforcement over the last year, and it is quite clearly having some impact on the figures. We've mentioned the AI cameras that we've recently trialled. So we've got this is the location that we've sort of put the first set of cameras. So this cluster of things here is a roundabout. Yeah, there's sort of 2 ways in, 2 ways out. So is it an ideal location to put some cameras? So you can't actually see on there because we've got, I think, on the left-hand side, that's the amount of cases that were reported to us in a 2-year period. And then on the right-hand side is since we installed the cameras. So we only installed the cameras 9th of February 2023. So obviously it's not like for like comparables, but you can see there that we actually haven't had any incidents.
Can you just put your microphone on, please? Is that what you're asking?
I'll just talk a bit later.
Because this is saying where the cameras are.
Can the people see it?
See the broadcast.
Okay, well, that's all right. We'll
So it's
deter them.
brilliant.
It'll be deterrent.
It's not specifically where they come from.
It's not specifically where they are.
Okay.
And then we've recently installed some only middle of June on Wood Lane.
Well, I've just reported one today, so it didn't work.
So you can see there, we have quite a cluster for every 2 year period, and it's been reduced sort of straight away.
Yeah.
It is a location that we tend to get fairly regular reports, so it's a good sort of indication. Got some potentially going to purchase some new cameras, so these are some of the hotspot locations that we sort of identify. We're looking for clustering of fly tipping because we're looking for cameras to monitor it. Where it's spread over a long distance, we're not going to have very much success. So we're just looking for clusters. So there's a couple of locations there. And then we've just got some general sort of information here. That's just an indication of how widespread the issues are. You could pretty much draw the shape of the borough around those circles. It isn't a problem for a specific location. It's across the borough. Again, that's it. Sort of since 1st of April 2019, so it's quite a lot of data. And this report is live. We can make it available on the website if that's something that you want to do, so that you can see it. It's just something we use currently to make our decisions about where to put cameras. If we want to.
Yeah, I think that apart from the actual location of the cameras, I think the rest of it would be really useful, I think, for people to see. The other thing I was saying, and this might be something that you can provide as part of what you're doing, if we detect a fly tip somewhere, and say take a photograph of it, if there was a hot link on the website, so we can just go straight in and say, look, there's a fly tip here, here's a photograph of it, you know, you obviously have the date and time. That would make life so much easier instead of keep bombarding Kath with emails, because I just go straight to Kath and I'm sure she's fed up with getting them. So yeah, that would be really helpful. So just so that even if it's only councillors, but it could be for everybody that could just put in, if they see a flight, easy to report it and get it sorted. That'd be really good. Yes.
I was just going to, just on that point, we've got a new system that we've launched in the end of June, which will have a portal link to it, which will make it easier for the public to send in any complaints about noise or fly tipping or anything like that. So that is something that we're working on so that it can be streamlined, and we can send out the link to all members and councillors once that goes live, so that everybody can. It's just a straight way for everybody to report it to us.
That would be really useful. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. I think that link would be very welcome.
What has it got?
Thank you. Just looking at item 6, where it's what next. Interested to see where it talked about the crew being provided with a mobile device and they go and pick up. I'm just wondering that where it says completed their job on the system, does it actually then say actions and removed? And I'd be interested to know as well, do we know, or is it recorded the type of fly tipping? An example, Packington Lane, which Max Oak, which is in here, Packington Lane in Coleshill is famous for getting fly tipping. I do remember many years ago, I think we removed about 200 tyres. But it would be interested to note what type of fly tipping that could actually help potentially where it may be coming from as well.
Through the chair, we do record that information. So through the Power BI, one of the pages, you can see what kind of waste is being cleared. That information, we can of course make that available to you. And also there's the new system will make that a lot easier for us to collect that information and provide that to the public as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions really. I know from experience with CCTV that when you put a camera up, you have to put notices up. I wonder how you get around that one, whether you have to do that or not. And the other thing I'd really like to know is, the difference between an AI camera and our previous cameras. I assume the AI camera is in some way clever, but what does that mean effectively?
Yes, so we still have to put signage up. So all the locations that we've got cameras, we've got signage up, which also provides a deterrent. In terms of the AI cameras, we've got 2 types of cameras out there at the moment. We've got sort of wildlife trail cameras, and they have low battery life, etc. They're quite troublesome for us to maintain. So that's why we looking at different cameras. The AI cameras are monitored sort of by some artificial intelligence, and if they see rubbish dropped, we receive notification in the environmental health team. So it sort of cuts out quite a bit of the work that traditionally we've had to do, reviewing footage and then sort of finding fly tips. So just sort of speeds things up a little bit for us in that sense. And it all operates on the Internet of Things, which is a new thing for me, but basically all the mobile data that's out there, it will use any service to sort of get that information to us. Yes, it just sort of makes things a little bit easier.
So just to be clear, if somebody steals the camera, it's still got the data, basically.
Yeah, we've got so the cameras have got location data as well, so the cameras will still be live, so we'll still actually be able to track where the camera has gone. So, which we used to have a lot of trail cameras pinched, so these have all stayed in place. Oh, so far, whoops.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, having seen the graph that you displayed earlier, I mean, it's really pleasing to see that you're having an impact. I mean, obviously, the signage isn't stopping you actually catching people, which is good to see. And I mean, yes, if the cameras are making life easier and helping to actually land people in trouble about fly tipping, that's all to the good, isn't it? And, so keep up the good work. Really. Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Only yesterday I had an elderly lady who rang me and she's asked to get a 3-piece suite, a 2-seater and an armchair she wanted taken out of the house. So I rang our council here, the Borough Council, and they will take 5 items for £29. I think and that was booked online, took me 5 minutes. All I needed was, not online, on the phone actually, all I needed was a bank card and paid, and it'll be picked up next week. But if we as a Borough Council could promote it more, maybe it would help our fly tipping, reduce it. Because the elderly lady, if I hadn't have phoned the council, she might have got someone else come with a van, charged her more money, take it and fly tip, like you say. But I don't think we promote it enough. Even if we had it on our side of our bin wagons or something, so look, anybody want anything, remove it from there. Furniture that we council could do 5 items for £29. She only managed 4, just this 3-piece suite and a mattress. So we're still missing one. But if we promote it more, I think, Chair, we could help the fly tipping.
Yeah, it is a really good service. I think also at some point it would be really useful because we still use Emmaus, and that is a really good system. So basically, when these bulky items are picked up, they go to a place just in Coventry called Emmaus, and they are repaired if they can be, but recycled in some way and sold. And all the people that work there were homeless. They're given a uniform, they're given a job, they're given somewhere to stay, they're given some pocket money, but the rest of their money goes into a bank account so that after a certain number of months they can get their own flat and then it's back on their feet. The whole system is really good. It works really well. And as Councillor Singh's just said, it's a good, I mean, for £29, you get rid of 5 major items. So, yeah, something we should really promote. Absolutely. Sorry, Ray, Councillor Johnson, do you want to say something?
Just expanding on what Councillor Singh said, I think we miss a trick that the bin lorries go down every street in the borough every week of the year, that to advertise things like that is, to me, a bit of a no-brainer, because it's an advert that, as I say, goes down every street of the borough every week of the year. And not only that, but I think it could be used a lot more to advertise things that the council are doing, because some people haven't got the internet. Some people just, as Councillor Singh said, they just ring up and say, well, how do I do this? So I think it is one of the tricks that we're missing, is we've got big advertising hoardings that travel every street of the borough every week of the year that we could use a lot more.
Thank you. Yeah, the Councillor Wright.
Evan, so will you be phasing out the wildlife cameras altogether?
Fortunately, the AI cameras are expensive, and there is an ongoing cost for the AI to monitor them. So we probably won't be able to phase them out completely. But where there are opportunities to seek funding, we're sort of exploring that as soon as we can. So we'd like to have more of them, but we'll have enough to go around everywhere.
Yeah.
If their numbers keep coming down.
I was going to say they'll pay for themselves. Yeah. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. Just coming back on Councillor Singh, speaking about the refuse lorries that come around. Yes, they do go up and down the streets. I'm just wondering as well that when we next have a letter drop from the, again, they cost, but so that you can attach to your bin, which there stands there all year round. As soon as you put your stuff in there or whatever, you can actually see it, and as that's a permanent reminder on your bin that is there every single day. It's there to remind you when you go to empty or fill a bin. So I think that might be worth looking into, and that would help Council Singh. And again, with potential for fly tipping, it's just that constant reminder. And I'm sure we can advertise it ourselves on Facebook pages, etc. ourselves as well.
I think any more questions come to
Thanks, Chair. If the cameras pick up on any other sort of unwanted activity, people changing registration plates or stealing, that kind of thing, do you share that with the police and fire?
It's almost like you knew. We have had that very incident. We actually shared a number plate change, and it did result in some strong evidence. Fortunately, I knew the person who was changing the number plate. That went to the police, and that was linked to a robbery in Coventry. That's another example of the strength of having some cameras out there. We get some other crime addressed.
Councillor Taylor.
My question: how much of these fly tipped deposits have been left from out of borough, have been brought in to the borough from, or do you not record where it's coming from?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for us to know. With the ones we've got evidence in, we can get those figures for you, and we can look into that. But for the wide scale across the borough, it's really difficult for us to know because we don't know who's doing it. So a lot of the times we do think that it is cross border, and that's part of our strategy, is to work with local councils and county. And we've got a meeting in September with the police to try to figure out what other councils are doing and what we're doing and how we can all work together on that. But we just don't, if we don't know where they're coming from and we don't know what, it's really hard for us to see whether they're outside of the borough or within. But it's with the case that we've got open investigations on, that is something that we can find out.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the benefits of North Warwickshire is that we've got really good communication links, and one of the problems in North Warwickshire is we've got good communication links. So people coming in as well as our getting out. So we do get all sorts of crime actually coming across our borders because it's easy to get away. So yeah, so I'm sure it's recorded where we can, but we do seem to get it from out of borough. Quite right. Okay. Oh yes, sorry.
Very quick point. Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously the cost of fly tipping is a burden to the council and whatever. But in my canal working days, we quite frequently, as we went around getting to the canals, had people all up in their cars as we approached their drives because they thought we were going to flight it because we were, in a van and the like. And actually, I mean, by reducing the problem, you're reducing the anxiety for a lot of landowners who have to meet the cost if it arrives on their land. It is a real problem and a worry for a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you. If everybody's happy then, I'll go to the recommendation, which just says that we note the report. So if somebody could propose that would be great. Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, and seconded by Councillor Reeve. Thank you very much. Those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Let's move on then. Thank you very much. To the Leisure Facilities Service Improvement Plan, which is item 8. So I would just like to say on this report to note the impact of our Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee. Our Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee is an official subcommittee of this board, and you can see in items 4.3 and 4.4 how they're working together with the main committee to underpin some of the work that we're doing, and how much is going on in terms of promotion work to try and get more and more people to use our facilities, and the fact that we continually take feedback from our customers to make sure that we can adapt our services in the way that they would prefer. So I'm going to ask Russell to come in briefly on this for anything you wish to highlight. Okay.
Yeah, so through you, Chair. So on 4.3, which is the poverty briefing information, we discussed that Health and Wellbeing Working Party. Quite a bit of detail, to be fair, and Health and Wellbeing Working Party gave some really good sort of input into Wi-Fi, where we've got it at the pool, could it be improved, could it be introduced to the Memorial Hall, a lot of things about how we create better information and how we get information out there about what services we already offer, as well as how we can improve the services that we offer as well. So that's then being fed back into the working party at each meeting to see how we're progressing on the action plans and share with them. And yet on the second bit in health testing, the working party funded 2 of our 3 scales that were introduced across sites. Now, they were initially launched at Polesworth and they were really popular there. Then launched at Coleshill and more recently Addiston. And at Addiston, we within 2 weeks achieved, I think, 100.
How many? So
100 tests within 2 weeks. So it really took off there. It's popular with staff, with customers, we're getting inquiries in. We've had some sign-ups off the back of it. So we're just discussing more recently how we sort of continue to monitor the use of that and how we keep people interested and engaged. So at the point of use, we try and encourage someone to book in a month's time to see their progress, but it great stats on your health in terms of not just sort of your body composition, what your body's made of, but it can help you with balance, posture, improving general health and lifestyles as well. We're looking to seek funding for blood cholesterol testing and blood glucose testing as well to progress that. And we took our scales to the council house, was it? Scales and everything. We had great feedback there, and we're going to take it to the depot in September for know your numbers, which is blood pressure awareness.
Okay. Comments and questions, anybody? Yes, Councillor Roberts.
Obviously, being a Polesworth councillor, you can imagine that we've got a few questions that we'd like to raise with you regarding the Polesworth facilities, particularly. If I can just point you in the direction of the consultation point on 2.1 of the report. It states consultation has taken place with relevant members and any comments received will be reported verbally at the meeting. My question, first of all, to you is who was consulted, who are relevant members, and when was this, please? That's the first part of the question.
Is it you, Russell, or is it Simon?
Sorry, Chair. Through you, this is part of the board process. We circulate our draft reports through to members. I don't know if this one actually went out. Did it?
Oh, I didn't circulate it. Normally I'd send it before the board meeting, but on this occasion. So
Did not go out this time?
Right, it's triggered through our board report process and that sort of stuff. So it sounds like that hasn't been done on this occasion. So apologies to members for that.
So who are the relevant members? Sorry, through you, Chair.
So
Okay, is it just us or is it other parish councils as well, maybe, or? No, just out of interest, really.
Through you, Chair, we would circulate this to the Community and Environment Board, and if it got particular issues in for children and young people, we'd send that to those relevant portfolio holders, that things like that. But it's contained within the Borough Council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I do have a few questions actually. Is there a business case that's outlining the timeline, the scale of costs? I know we've had a ballpark figure of around 3 million the last I heard. I'm a bit concerned that looking at other facilities, particularly, for example, Coleshill, that was quite a few years ago, when you look at the figures that they had in their play, it was a lot more near £9 million. There doesn't seem to be any capital or departmental figures that are bandied around. I just wonder, have we got all this sort of mapped out in a
talking
case?
about a new Polesworth facility. That's actually coming up in the next agenda item, but we can talk about it here because we are talking about Polesworth separately under item 9.
Okay,
but quite happy. Yeah, we can say that we put aside 3 million. I think we're estimating just over 5 million, aren't we, for a facility?
Through you, Chair. Currently, that's correct. At the end of 2020. There was an assessment of the capital cost for new provision for Polesworth, which relates to information in your next board report. But at that point in time, it was costed at about 4.3 million. And clearly we know what's happened to building costs since then. So somewhere around about 5.5. But if I can just dispel some of the information there. Coleshill Leisure Centre, the capital cost for the build of Coleshill Leisure Centre at that time, accepting the fact that you were talking about 2014, was 3.9 million. I'm not sure where
with the department costs as well, and not just the capital, just all the departmental and resource as well.
The overall budget for Coleshill was just over £4 million, but the build cost was 3.9.
Okay.
So yes, so obviously we will talk about it more in the next agenda item. So if there's anything else on the leisure facilities improvement plan, Councillor Jackson.
I was just looking through the minutes and I was thought there's low scores for the leisures and marketing, and 6.8 out of 10 from the public consultation. And is there an action plan in place? Do you actually know what people want, what they're looking for, and how you're going to improve on?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, so marketing is an area for the leisure services where we've sort of got to focus and a plan on how we improve. There's a web review taking place in September, and we're sort of focusing our attentions on that. We don't have much literature in sight, so we're reviewing that as well as putting more online as well. And I think a lot of it is once we've got that basic information all in one place, is how we then distribute that locally better. So we've got some plans for it, and the feedback was more, I think, on it was in different areas of you don't offer this service, or could you offer this service, or where do I get information about this service? We're asking before we actually did. So then it was just how do we get that information out there. So we're thinking about social media, well, brochures, web, social media, and local places.
Right, okay. So do you actually speak with the schools and things as well? See what the children want to see, or is it just
for holidays?
Yeah.
For holiday activities, a lot of the schools offer their own things, so it's hard to sort of get into them to discuss what they want. We haven't done a holiday activities sort of consultation this year in terms of survey. That's going to come later in the year. But when we go out to do that, I think schools will possibly involving the
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. Probably enough. I was probably that's something very similar with the holidays in the schools. Is that worked in part we work in partnership with the schools for activities, as Council just mentioned. That was one of the interesting aspect. And whilst Simon was talking as well, I was thinking about the swimming pool. We've got one in Atherstone, but nearest one to Colton, or that side of it is in Solihull. It's just, I'm sure that our school pupils go to the one at Chelmsley Wood. Just wanted to be interested to know figure-wise, the schools and adults, how many of them go cross-border to visit the Chelmsley Wood. So we are actually seeing how we're encouraging more people if they wanted to go swimming, or is it that Solihull promote it within the borough themselves?
Through the chair, yeah, I'm not sure. I'll do some digging to find out. We do attract some across border as well from Leicestershire and the counties, which is nice. But yeah, find out about something.
Simon, did you want to say something?
Only very briefly on that point, that there was some work undertaken within the strategic outcomes planning model exercise that said that roughly we exported as many users outside of the borough as we actually brought in. So we're bringing people into the borough, I mean, particularly down the A5 corridor, as you can imagine, to the one swimming pool that we've got in the borough. But the issue about people from the south of North Warwickshire will be one of ease of access to facilities, just people making a decision to go to a facility that's just down the road from where they live, and it happens to be outside of North Warwickshire. But it's we import as many as we export there and thereabouts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The poverty proofing, it seems quite Atherstone centric. Is there any other provision, or is there any monitoring of the equality across the borough?
Any aspects in particular? The poverty proofing was across sites, so when they did it, they based themselves across all 3 sites. So the action plans to be done across all sites, so it involved.
So it will be across, not just the.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So if everybody's happy then, if we go back to the recommendation, the board notes and comments upon the progress made against the requirements identified in the approved 23-24 leisure facilities service improvement plan. Words in the right order. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Singh. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you. So moving on to Polesworth then, which is item number 9. As I said, we will look at each meeting, we'll look in detail at each leisure facility, because I think it's really important that we understand, because we talk about Polesworth and Atherstone and Coleshill, but do you actually know what goes on in those areas? So obviously this report talks about the current provision in Polesworth and how it's changed quite recently from what we used to have, which is obviously in the report. And also it looks briefly looking forward at where we're going in Polesworth. And just a brief comment on our partnership with schools. It does seem ideal that we should partner with schools, but I have to say, whilst it is really good, and we do, particularly in Atherstone, it's very successful, it is also very problematic. Schools have holidays where they don't want us to go in. Sometimes they're disrupted for other reasons, and we're trying to run a business. People are paying direct debit to us to get access to facilities, which we then have to say to them, sorry, it's closed for 2 weeks. You know, it's not easy. So we do work with schools, but I just want you to know that the officers work really hard to make it work. And the other thing I'd like to say is we've talked very briefly about a new facility at Polesworth, and obviously we're really committed to that. But in order, it's not just the capital spend. We also, as a committee, when it gets to that point, we need to look at the business case. Can we afford the revenue costs, is the question. We don't make any profit. We don't even break even on any of our leisure facilities. So when we build a new centre, we have to say to us, how much is this going to cost us ongoing to keep this facility running? So that's something this board will get very involved in when we get nearer the time. I just wanted to flag that up. So other than that, Simon, if you wanted to just do a brief introduction, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just 30 seconds really from me. As the Chair's already pointed out, this is the first in a series of reports. And we thought we'd take Polesworth first because of the move away from the school and into the fitness hub. in the centre of the town. So we've endeavoured to do three things. A, give some context about that, and did we achieve the targets that were set at the time, particularly savings related targets. It's looking at current provision and where we are. It's been a difficult sector. There have been lots of difficult sectors because of the pandemic. So we've had a look immediately pre-pandemic to where we are now in terms of recovery, and then touching on the issue of future provision. Because the authority made it clear that the move to the fitness hub, that was essentially seen as a short-term move while we looked at the longer-term options, and that is clearly a piece of work that is ongoing. What we didn't want to do was to provide you with a 10, 12-page report. Nobody's ever thanked us for doing that sort of thing, so we've tried to keep it brief. But if there are things that are missing that would help us for future reports, then let us know when we come to report on Coleshill and Atherstone. Clearly, we can pick that point up, and it's essentially over to you.
Thanks, Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Few points really. I mean, first of all, I have to say, you know, I was an unconfirmed doubter of the fitness hub in Polesworth, but I have to say I think you've done rather a good job with it. It's well used, and you know, it's I think it shows that when the facilities in the right place, they will get used actually. And I note that you're thinking of the Abbey Green Park for the full centre, as it were, when it's constructed, and that seems to me to be a thoroughly good move. I note the difficulties which the Chair has mentioned about working with schools. I mean, one of the most problematic things about schools these days is that they have to have secure sites in the day, and actually sports halls and leisure facilities don't actually go along with that terribly easily. It becomes quite problematic. But that's there. I mean, the Polesworth Sports Centre has given rise to a lot of good things. I can speak personally because I have a granddaughter who's 9, and we thought she'd be quite good at gymnastics. She went to the gymnastics club at the Polesworth Sports Centre, and she got picked up and taken to the Tamworth Olympic gymnastics thing. She's rarely the right way up. She's won regional competitions, and you know, she absolutely lives and breathes gymnastics. And if the facilities aren't there, those opportunities are denied. And that's, you know, yes, meeting the cost is important, but providing the opportunities, I would say, is even more important. The one thing I would like to say about the Polesworth Sports Centre, I'll be delighted when it's done. We hear sort of reports that the plans exist. I don't know whether that's right or not, but if they do exist, we haven't seen them and would like to see them. And that would be really, really useful. One of the things, I mean, Ray mentioned earlier, the all-weather facility that's at St Elizabeth's. And actually, you know, that's something that, again, could do wonderful things in Polesworth. We have an incredibly sort of thriving football group in the Polesworth. That always looking for pitches. An all-weather surface would be an absolute sort of boon to Polesworth. And of course, it might take some of the weight off Atherstone as well if that was there. So yeah, if there are plans, we would really like to see them. I think you're moving to the right place, and we hope to see a wonderful sports centre in Polesworth in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there plans, Simon? I haven't seen anything, nothing specific. I've heard bits about how much it's going to cost, but yeah.
Yeah, through you, Chair, there are some very outline indicative plans that have been produced. We haven't made them public or brought them here necessarily. They raise all sorts of expectations, and we haven't been able to do the revenue business plan modelling to go alongside of that. And you know, as you put it out there, everybody runs away and they expect it tomorrow. And I think that there's an inherent danger in that. And the reason for that is because obviously we've focused an awful lot of activity as yet unsuccessful, which is quite depressing, on levelling up fund bids for a replacement facility in Atherstone. We were asked to make that our priority. We've bid for that money twice and we've been unsuccessful twice. That's exhausted an awful lot of our time and capacity, so Atherstone has been the priority. But we're gradually evolving some business cases, so at some point in time we'll be able to bring them to the board, but perhaps when they're a bit more refined than they are at this moment in time.
Okay.
Great. Come back very quickly. Yeah, I mean, yes, thank you very much for that. I accept the need for Atherstone, but I think I'm right in saying that when local plan is through and all the rest of it, Polesworth and Dordon collectively will be the largest community in North Warwickshire, and you know, I think that makes us a priority. I'll keep on saying that.
Absolutely, why not? I think that's right. I think the thing that's been slightly delayed is that obviously it's linked to the major developments planned for that area,
Yes.
and so that there is obviously there's a financial link as well as a need link, if you like. But we are working in the background, but we do need to focus. You're quite right to keep bringing us back to it. We need to focus on a timescale for this and where we're going to get the money. Even I'd like to see, because if you were in the planning board last night, I was moaning about 106 and how the timing isn't right. And I don't want to have all the houses in Polesworth built before we can have a leisure centre, if you see what I mean. So we're going to have to come up with a plan. So we'll bring it back. We haven't forgotten. Okay. Thanks, Simon.
Sorry, again, through you, Chair, one other thing. Remiss of me, you touched on artificial grass pitches. Your current playing pitch strategy, subject to review, hope to bring that report back in October, currently has priority provision for 2 artificial grass pitches, 3G artificial grass pitches, which is different to the one at Keeley School and others. One of those located somewhere in Polesworth. Actually, the appropriate space doesn't exist in Abbey Green Park to put it there. It's another thing to consider in the context of future development and outdoor sports hubs and all that sort of thing. But clearly, we're mindful of the need for provision in Polesworth as well.
Yeah.
Welcome that. Thank you.
We'll have to think about location. Yeah. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, me again. Last time, Simon, I asked for a timeline and you said you may be able to give us one in August. And I appreciate some of the comments that you've made, but I'm going to ask again, just so it's minuted, that, you know, is there any way that you could bring to the next meeting some idea of when we're likely to start seeing some of these plans? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Yeah, I don't know. Have we got a time when we can bring a timeline?
Sorry, Chair. Just for clarification, we're talking in the context of a new facility for Polesworth. Is that the nature of the question? Yeah. I'm happy to be guided by councillors on when they would like that brought, given obviously that we're still looking at the live issue in Atherstone. We continue to pursue that particular option. But clearly, if members want to bring forward work on Polesworth, then we would need to discuss that in our work programmes with leading councillors on that.
I wonder if it would be useful. I know it's very early stage in planning, but just to have a paper that would help a discussion on at least what's going to be in the new shed, whatever we call it, the building, the new building, what's going to be in it, and what's needed. And so, yeah, that just that sort of discussion would help, just to get things off the ground. So we could probably bring something forward quite quickly on that one, just to see what members' views are. We could put something down, then members can have their views. Might even do some consultation. We'll see. The trouble with consultation, we don't want to raise expectations too soon. But you know, anyway, we can talk about that. Okay, so either the next meeting or the one after. We just see.
Through you, Chair, if I had hair to lose. But to respond to that, it wouldn't take us long to do that, because obviously there's some work that we can call on that we previously had commissioned. I mean, we've touched on it in this report about the nature of the facilities that would meet what is perceived demand at that particular point in time. I'd take Councillor Parsons' point about latent demand and all that sort of thing. And demand that's generated by opportunity and knowledge and people's resources and all that sort of stuff. But we could do a report on potential provision, some outline cost implications, and then members can have a discussion about timescales.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be really helpful.
Okay.
I'm just a little bit worried about how long the next agenda's getting, because we keep putting things on the October agenda, because it could be a very long evening just for that. So.
You're worried.
Okay, thanks very much. So I'm going to go to the recommendation here with the bold notes and comments upon the current position in respect of leisure facility provision in. So, a proposer, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Byron. Oh, Amelia. Sorry, that's Amelia. And seconded by Councillor Waffles. Those in favour? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to Anthony Workshop Sports Ground and the Home Advantage Programme. So, just so for new members, over the last few years, we've been having one or two projects, if you like, of this nature, where clubs have been using our land, and renting it from us to do football and whatever it is they do. And we've moved towards a model where we give them a long-term lease. They take over more of the maintenance and more important and more responsibility in general for the club. And more importantly, it release with a long-term lease, they can apply for funding that we as a local authority can't. And so they can get funding to enhance their facilities. And this is another one of those types of projects, if you like, that we're dealing with. We always work closely with the clubs, as we are with this one. We work closely with them to get their business case together and to get their funding applications in. And this is one that we're asking to give a long-term lease to the Anthony Workshops. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I have no issue. I see no issues with the plan, and the games that happen there now don't seem to cause too much of an issue with parking and things like that. And the only worry that I have is that are the local residents going to be consulted first? Because obviously there might be a few that might object, but I can't see.
But they're using it already. It isn't a new facility. They're already there. All we're doing is giving them more responsibility.
Yeah, it's just because it's obviously going to be over a longer fixed time. So.
Simon, would you like to come in on this? It is my understanding is that it's not going to be any different from what it is, except we're giving them a lease that's for 25 years.
Yeah, through you, Chair, there would be a slight increase in volumes of activity because Orchwood Sports would be able to relocate some of the activity that currently takes place at Arley Recreation Ground, which in actual fact causes some issues for the local community there. So it would ease an issue there and take it to a more appropriate site. So there would be an increase in activity, a marginal increase in activity, but it doesn't actually affect that many local residents. But clearly we would communicate with those that are.
The only issue I can see is it's not going to affect, obviously, when games go on at the moment, public still have access to go on, and because it is used quite a lot in our local community, and would they still have access to that ground? You know, if they're going to be taking on more.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to say the success of the one down Ratcliffe Road and the model that was used there, that us, myself and Councillor Singh are the local members, that we had quite some considerable meetings there with officers, and from the day that the lease was signed, things have moved forwards for all of the sports. And where down there we've got 4 sports, we've now got other sports saying, can we be included? So the 4 original sports is now 5. So the model that's used is successful, it does work, and as you said, it's opened an enormous amount of funding routes for them, whether it be through the FA, the rugby union, the cricket, the hockey, and because they've got the lease, those doors are now open and they're knocking at open doors rather than before there was banging on closed doors.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just basically, just about the success to Bootle Rec at the moment. I mean, they have coaching sessions down there. There's children's parties. I mean, as I say, you've got girls' sides, children's under sixes. It's something that should be celebrated. It really is a bit of success up to now, thankfully.
So those are just two of the models. So the councillors just knew those are two of the models that we've used this model in the past. So it's it's really good that the community owns what they want to do. It's their club and they own it and they run it basically. So okay, so Simon, yes.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just a couple of brief observations. It's probably fortuitous that Evan's here. Lots of the initiatives that you're talking about, Evan started in a previous life, so
before we lost him,
while he's there. But just a cautionary note. This is about submitting an expression of interest to what essentially is at a pilot stage of development from the Premier League, the Football Association, and the Football Foundation. They're looking to support probably 10, maybe a dozen projects across the land. So I don't want you to run away with the fact that we're guaranteed being included in this scheme in the first round. I think it's important that we play our card in the first round, and we've already met with the Football Foundation and the FA. They appear quite receptive to the plan and the proposal, but I'm sure they're receptive to all sorts of people around the country, including my daughter, who's putting in an application from a different area completely. So that's competition going on in the background there. But I don't want you to run away with the fact that just because we put in the expression of interest that we're guaranteed success, we'll do whatever we can. From that point of view.
I like the plan. It's just obviously worrying about the local residents.
Absolutely.
It's going to affect them as well.
Thank you. So if I can bring you back to the recommendation that the board approves the principle of granting a long-term lease to Anthony Sports Junior Football Club in respect of its security as tenure at Anthony Workshop Sports Ground, and also approves the submission of an expression of interest in seeking financial support from the Home Advantage programme through which to support the club's development of the site. A proposer, please. Thank you, Councillor Patson, and a seconder, Councillor Singh. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against or abstentions, please? Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. So we move on then to the Health and Wellbeing Working Party minutes, which we've got in front of you. And I'll say this is a formal subcommittee of this board, and their work feeds into it. I'm going to hand over to the chairman, which is Councillor Smith over there, to see if there's anything she'd like to highlight for us.
Thank you, Chair. We have adopted the new action plan, which was passed by this board in March, and this will go through from 23 through to 2027. And what we will be doing in each group, in each week, in each meeting, get the words right and everything, we'll be spotlighting one of the areas within North Warwick. The last meeting we looked at the leisure and the community development, and Russell came and gave us a very in-depth presentation about what was going on, and we really got stuck into discussing how we were going to get the initiatives out to get people in, and that went on quite a while to say the least. Who was there to remember? But we've got quite a good leisure facility going. Lots and lots of programmes going on for the children in the summer. So that's part of that. And what Russell was saying about the property proof and the scales. One thing he didn't mention was that we've had some really good feedback, and the people that provided the scales think it's neat. They've been very supportive, and they're going to use the launch that we've had as a case study in one of their magazines, in the Leisure and Management magazine. So hopefully we will be able to see that at some point if it comes out. One of the things that was brought up at the meeting and was submitted by Councillor Stewart was the air pollution. So we've decided that our next meeting obviously will be highlighting the environment, and I think that's going to be get Steve to come and speak to us, I think. And then Matthew Green, can't read my own writing, Matthew Green's going to come and explain this to us.
Very good.
So there we go.
Thank you very much. Can you remind us how many members of that committee do you have?
Gosh, now you're asking me a question.
I mean, I'm not sure whether is it 7 or
6, 7? I think.
yes,
7.
yeah. So yeah, hopefully those that want to attend are attending, and if you don't want to, if you want to attend and you're not, then you can apply and there'll be a waiting list. And you can go. It's a really good opportunity to talk in depth about stuff. Yeah.
We have actually got a budget, so if anybody's got anything that they'd like to bring up,
yes,
we can propose.
Brilliant.
Environmentally well-being.
Good.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. On that note, I'd just like to say I missed, although I am part of the committee, the subgroup, I missed the meeting because I couldn't make it, but I'd just like to say thank you for agreeing for the funding for the air quality monitoring report, and we look forward to seeing the results. So thank you.
If I can say on air quality, we did have, and there are somewhere in the borough, some wearable air quality monitors that, and they would. It requires a full. It's no good just giving them out to people and saying just try them. It needs a full project, so all the results are brought back and we understand what's going on and all that. And that never got organised. It was sometime in the last administration. But we have a number of these monitors that were actually given out by the county council. And it might, I don't know whether you can unearth them somewhere in environmental health, but they are around somewhere. I'm just throwing it in case they're useful. You might look at them and think they might not work. But anyway, if they are, the idea of them is that you sort of wear them on a waistband or something as you're going around, and it monitors the air quality, that particularly people who are walking to school through the traffic, that sort of thing. So just put that in because it might be something that's useful. Right, any other questions or comments? In which case, oh yes.
Just very grateful for the update, and certainly on the air quality as well, because I think that will be something that we'll pick up on our climate change members group and then coming back here jointly. Yes. That would be very, very welcome. Looking at our plan in front of me, that'd be very, very welcome.
That's good. Another good link then.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
That committee. Thank you very much. In which case, I'll declare the meeting closed and thank you all for your attendance.